On Saturday, President Donald Trump signed executive orders to impose extensive tariffs on imports from Canada, Mexico, and China, escalating a trade war that could reshape global supply chains and unsettle financial markets. The measures include a 25% tariff on most goods from Canada and Mexico, and a 10% tariff on Chinese products. Trump has long argued that these tariffs are necessary to address trade imbalances, undocumented migration, and illegal drug flows. However, the immediate backlash from key trading partners and warnings from economists highlight the risks for American consumers, businesses, and the broader U.S. economy. Before addressing Trump's warning to Canada in response to its retaliation, let's first examine the measures taken by the Canadian government and provinces against the U.S. tariffs. The White House's tariff orders, effective at 12:01 a.m. on Tuesday, left little time for last-minute negotiations. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau swiftly announced reciprocal 25% tariffs on approximately $155 billion CAD, $155 billion CAD, $106 billion USD of U.S. goods. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum also pledged countermeasures, though detailed plans were not immediately released. China's Commerce Ministry vowed to take legal action at the World Trade Organization and signaled a proportional response, though no specific tariffs were announced by Sunday. Trudeau, invoking Canada's long history of security and military cooperation with the U.S., condemned the tariffs and urged Canadians to support local products and reconsider travel to U.S. destinations. Mexican officials rejected the Trump administration's claim that Mexico has not done enough to curb illicit drug flows, emphasizing the importance of bilateral cooperation in addressing the fentanyl crisis. Both countries warned that prolonged tariffs could cause significant economic disruptions, with similar risks for the U.S. In addition to federal measures, Canadian provinces have implemented their own responses. Ontario, Canada's most populous province and economic powerhouse, has been particularly vocal. Premier Doug Ford instructed the Liquor Control Board of Ontario to remove American-made alcoholic beverages from its shelves, a symbolic and economically impactful move given Ontario's nearly $1 billion in annual imports of U.S. wine, beer, and spirits. Ford also hinted at further actions against U.S. businesses operating in Ontario, potentially affecting trade agreements in the automotive and technology sectors. The provincial government is working with Canadian retailers and manufacturers to shift supply chains toward domestic and European suppliers. Ford has also called for a snap provincial election on February 27th, arguing that Ontario needs a stronger mandate to respond to U.S. economic aggression. British Columbia, known for its progressive policies, has taken a politically charged approach. Premier David Eby announced that the BC Liquor Distribution Branch would halt purchases of liquor from Republican-led U.S. states that support Trump's tariff policies. The province is also exploring increased taxes on American tech and entertainment services, including streaming platforms, to encourage local alternatives. Additionally, British Columbia is focusing on boosting agricultural and seafood exports to Asian markets to counterbalance reduced U.S. trade. Nova Scotia has adopted a multifaceted approach, focusing on infrastructure and commercial accessibility. Premier Tim Houston stated that the province would double highway tolls for U.S. commercial vehicles, discouraging American truckers from using Nova Scotia as a trade route. The Nova Scotia Liquor Corporation will also cease sales of all U.S. alcoholic beverages by February 4th, reinforcing the nationwide effort to limit American imports. These measures are expected to generate additional provincial revenue while increasing costs for U.S. businesses transporting goods through the region. Quebec has opted for a systemic approach by reviewing all procurement contracts involving U.S. suppliers, with plans to penalize those tied to U.S. government policies. Premier François Legault indicated that Quebec may prioritize European and Asian suppliers in key sectors like pharmaceuticals and construction. The provincial government has also launched an economic support package for local industries affected by U.S. tariffs, offering subsidies to companies shifting away from American raw materials. In Canada's north, the Northwest Territories government has announced plans to review procurement policies to eliminate purchases from U.S. companies where possible. Premier R.J. Simpson emphasized the importance of economic resilience in remote areas, that often rely on American goods for essential supplies. The territory is also exploring stronger trade ties with indigenous businesses and Arctic nations to diversify its economic network. These provincial measures complement the federal government's broader plan to impose 25% tariffs on $155 billion worth of U.S. goods, set to take effect on February 4, 2025. The initial phase targets $155 billion worth of U.S. goods, set to take effect on February 4, 2025. The initial phase targets $30 billion in imports, including consumer products like beverages, cosmetics, and paper goods. While provinces have tailored their responses to local economic needs, they remain aligned with Ottawa's overarching strategy to pressure Washington into reconsidering its trade policies. This unfolding trade war is reshaping Canada's domestic and international economic policies, with long-term consequences for industries and consumers on both sides of the border. In two controversial social media posts published hours after Canada's retaliation, President Trump criticized Canada's trade practices and revived the widely dismissed notion of incorporating Canada as the 51st U.S. state. These remarks, made amid intensifying trade disputes, provoked sharp condemnation from Canadian leaders who viewed them as provocative rather than legitimate policy. Trump claimed that the U.S. subsidizes Canada to the tune of hundreds of billions of dollars and suggested that Canada would cease to exist without American support. He portrayed statehood as beneficial for Canadians, promising lower taxes, stronger military protection, and no tariffs. Prime Minister Trudeau rejected the idea as unfounded and disrespectful, while the Canadian public widely criticized Trump's remarks as brinkmanship aimed at extracting trade concessions. The executive orders include a clause allowing the U.S. to increase tariffs if targeted countries retaliate, signaling the administration's intent to discourage such actions. However, Canada and Mexico have already announced retaliatory tariffs, suggesting they are prepared to defend their economic interests, potentially escalating the trade conflict further. Economists warn that these tensions could lead to higher consumer prices, disrupted supply chains, and economic slowdowns in the involved countries. In a follow-up post, Trump criticized what he called the tariff lobby, implicating entities like the Wall Street Journal in protecting countries such as Canada, Mexico, and China. He accused these nations of exploiting the U.S. through unfavorable trade deficits, inadequate crime prevention, and unchecked drug flows. Trump urged manufacturers to move production to the U.S. to avoid tariffs, framing the short-term pain as necessary for long-term economic gains. These statements align with his executive orders imposing tariffs on Canada, Mexico, and China, which have triggered immediate countermeasures and heightened tensions. While the idea of Canada becoming the 51st state has been a pop culture trope, its mention by a sitting U.S. president is unprecedented and alarming. Legal experts note that any annexation effort would require extraordinary steps, including a constitutional amendment or redefinition of international law. Canadian leaders have firmly rejected the notion, emphasizing their nation's sovereignty. Behind the inflammatory rhetoric lies a high-stakes trade battle fueled by competing economic visions. Trump's tariffs aim to pressure countries the White House deems unfair in their trade practices. Canada, a top supplier of energy, lumber, and automotive parts to the U.S., has historically enjoyed close economic ties with its southern neighbor. However, the White House argues these ties disproportionately benefit Canada. The tariffs are also affecting U.S. manufacturers, farmers, and other sectors reliant on Canadian materials or foreign markets, with economists warning of higher prices, reduced consumer spending, and hampered cross-border investment. The diplomatic fallout from Washington's hints of annexation risks alienating a vital ally. Canada is preparing diplomatic and legal responses to safeguard its economic interests, including through the World Trade Organization and the USMCA. Observers warn that continued public skirmishes could undermine long-standing cooperation on issues like defense, environmental protection, and border security. Despite the incendiary tone, back-channel negotiations between Washington and Ottawa may still de-escalate tensions. Trump is employing the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, a 1970s law granting the president broad tariff authority during national emergencies. The new executive orders go beyond the steel and aluminum tariffs of his first term, targeting a wide range of consumer goods, agricultural products, enseignements, and industrial inputs. Analysts warn of far-reaching consequences, including higher consumer prices, supply chain disruptions, and potential economic slowdowns. The tariffs could also lead to rising inflation and interest rates, further complicating the U.S. economic outlook. Energy imports from Canada, including oil, gas, and critical minerals, will face a reduced 10% tariff, acknowledging the U.S.'s reliance on Canadian power. However, even this lower tariff could disrupt Midwestern refineries dependent on Canadian crude. The White House has also closed the de minimis loophole, which previously exempted small packages under $800 from tariffs, affecting American consumers who shop online for low-cost goods from Canada, Mexico, or China. The inclusion of retaliation clauses in Trump's orders allows the administration to increase tariffs if targeted countries respond, creating uncertainty for industries reliant on stable trade flows. Canada, Mexico, and China have already signaled their intent to retaliate, raising the risk of a broader global trade conflict. Europe, though not named in the executive orders, remains a potential flashpoint, given Trump's criticism of the EU's trade surplus with the US. Between 2017 and 2021, Trump's tariffs contributed to a modest revival in some U.S. manufacturing sectors, but also drove up costs for businesses reliant on imported inputs, provoked retaliatory tariffs on agricultural products, and introduced volatility in financial markets. Economists worry that the new, more sweeping tariffs could spark larger disruptions, given the scale of trade with Canada, Mexico, and China. Thank you for watching this video. If you found the content insightful, please consider liking and subscribing to stay connected with our community. Your support is greatly appreciated.